Something strange just happened in Moscow. Donald Trump says he's this close to ending the war in Ukraine, and he's not joking around. A secretive 3-hour meeting just took place between Vladimir Putin and a man most Americans have never heard of, Steve Witkoff, a real estate tycoon, not a diplomat. Now Trump's telling reporters there's a very good chance he'll meet with Putin himself. Within days, and behind closed doors, the White House is scrambling to prepare what could be one of the most explosive summits in modern history. But here's the thing, not everyone's buying it. Some say Putin is bluffing. Others say Trump is playing with fire, and as missiles continue to rain down on Ukrainian cities, Zelensky isn't exactly celebrating. In fact, he just issued a chilling warning. So what's really going on behind the scenes? And is Trump bluffing? Or actually about to rewrite global history? Let's break it down. Of all the people Trump could have sent to negotiate peace with Vladimir Putin, no one expected Steve Witkoff. He's not a diplomat. He's not a military strategist. He's a luxury real estate developer known more for building high-end towers than brokering peace between nuclear powers. And yet, there he was, stepping off a plane in Moscow this week, shaking hands with Putin himself. Before disappearing behind closed doors for 3 full hours, Russian state media was quick to blast the images across the country. Witkoff, Putin, smiling, no interpreters in sight. Just two men meeting alone at one of the most dangerous moments in modern geopolitics. Why Witkoff, Trump hasn't explained. But insiders say he's part of a small circle of ultra-loyal confidants, someone Trump trusts more than his own diplomats. And that might be exactly why this meeting even happened in the first place. But here's where it gets even more bizarre. Despite the lengthy discussion, Trump later told reporters there had been no breakthrough. He refused to reveal any concrete details, just vague optimism and a warning that he's been disappointed before. It raised a lot of eyebrows. Was the meeting a real attempt at diplomacy, or just theater? Because while the cameras were rolling, another kind of pressure was quietly building behind the scenes. Back in Washington, Trump didn't waste time feeding the fire. Sitting in the Oval Office, flanked by advisors and cameras, he looked straight into a reporter's eyes and dropped the line that sent headlines spinning. There's a very good chance that we could be ending the ending, the road ending. The end of that road? It was classic Trump, vague, dramatic, and just ambiguous enough to spark a media frenzy. Was he talking about ending the war in Ukraine? Ending U.S. involvement? Or just another press stunt? Nobody could say for sure, but what stood out wasn't just the words, it was the urgency behind them. Trump made it crystal clear. He wants to meet with Putin. Not months from now. Not after long negotiations soon, and not just one-on-one. He's even floated the idea of a 3-way summit, including Ukrainian President Zelensky. For someone known for his unpredictability, this was unusually direct. And it got people asking, is Trump trying to outmaneuver the traditional diplomats and do this his way? Because while the State Department stayed quiet, Trump's inner circle was already working behind the scenes to set it all up. And that's when things started to move fast. Right after the Witkoff-Putin meeting, Trump got on the phone, and not just with his team. According to sources in Europe, Trump personally called several European leaders his message. He's ready to sit down with Putin, and it could happen as early as next week. But that wasn't all. He also floated the idea of a trilateral summit, one that would include not just Putin, but also Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. A dramatic move that could either bring peace or chaos. Multiple White House officials confirmed what the European leaders were saying. Putin had suggested the meeting himself during the 3-hour Moscow sit-down, and Trump, he jumped on it. Instead of slow diplomacy or back-channel negotiations, Trump reportedly ordered his team to move fast, faster than usual for anything of this scale. No finalized location, no fixed date. Just raw urgency. And it's not just about photo ops. Trump sees this as his moment. A chance to pull off what Biden, NATO, and the United Nations haven't. But with that kind of speed comes risk. Critics, inside and outside the government, are already warning. Rushing into this could backfire. And there's still a major wildcard. The looming threat of brutal new sanctions that Trump himself put on the table. Because while Trump is pushing for peace, he's also raising the stakes like never before. Just hours before the Witkoff-Putin meeting, Trump lit a fuse. He took to social media and made a bold, unfiltered threat. Russia had days to agree to a ceasefire or face devastating new sanctions, not just on Moscow itself, but on any country helping fund the war through oil purchases. And the target that raised the most eyebrows, India. Trump accused India of buying massive amounts of Russian oil, then flipping it for profit on the global market. In his words, they don't care how many people in Ukraine are being killed by the Russian war machine. The punishment? A 100% tariff on countries buying Russian oil? a move that would shake global markets and hit allies just as hard as enemies? Insiders said Trump was dead serious, but at the same time, his own administration was scrambling. A White House official quietly told reporters that the secondary sanctions, the ones aimed at Russia's trading partners, were still expected to be implemented by Friday. Yet hours later, Secretary of State Marco Rubio struck a different tone. He said Trump would decide whether to impose them in the next 24 to 36 hours. So what's really happening here? Some see it as leverage, Trump tightening the screws to force Putin's hand. Others see it as a gamble that could isolate the U.S. and spark a new trade crisis. But either way, the pressure is real, because for Russia, oil and gas revenues account for a quarter of its entire government budget. If Trump actually pulls the trigger on these sanctions, it won't just sting, it could choke off the cash fueling Putin's war. But before Trump makes his final call, something unexpected happened behind closed doors. For the first time since Trump returned to the White House, something shifted. According to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the Witkoff-Putin meeting didn't just break the ice, it cracked open the Kremlin's poker face. Rubio told Fox Business that Russia finally laid out concrete examples of what it would take to end the war. That's huge. Until now, every negotiation attempt had been stonewalled by vague demands and finger-pointing. But this time, Putin sent a message, and Trump sent one right back. Russian state media confirmed the exchange, claiming Putin had delivered signals to the U.S. on the Ukrainian issue. And not only that, the Kremlin says corresponding signals were received from Trump. In other words, there's a back and forth happening, and fast. But here's the twist. Nobody knows what those demands actually are, the Kremlin says. It'll release more details after Witkoff reports back to Trump, which means two things. They're stalling. They want to see how Trump reacts before making anything public. So what could Putin possibly be asking for? Some analysts suspect it's about territory freezing the war lines and demanding recognition of Russian control. Others believe it's sanctions relief or long-term guarantees that Ukraine won't join NATO. Whatever the ask, one thing is clear. Putin finally blinked. But just because he showed his cards, doesn't mean he's ready to fold. Because as Trump considers his next move, Ukraine's president is sounding the alarm. While Trump and Putin edge toward a potential peace summit, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky isn't celebrating. He's warning. Shortly after the Witkoff-Putin meeting, Zelensky spoke with Trump directly. On the surface, the tone was cautious optimism. But when Zelensky addressed his nation later that night, his message turned sharp. It seems that Russia is now more inclined toward a ceasefire, he said. But the main thing is that they do not deceive us in the details. Neither us nor the United States. That last part, do not deceive us, hit like a siren dot because, to Zelensky, this isn't just about talks, it's about trust. And from his perspective, Russia has given him no reason to believe this sudden shift is sincere. He's seen this pattern before. Russia signals peace, while loading missiles his concern. That behind the vague promises and diplomatic gestures, Putin could be stalling, buying time to regroup, rearm, and strike again when the world isn't watching. And Zelensky's fear isn't abstract. It's rooted in real-time bloodshed. While diplomacy played out in the Kremlin, Ukraine was once again under fire with deadly consequences. So while Trump speaks of peace and Putin hints at compromise, Zelensky is scanning every word for traps. Because for him, the cost of trusting the wrong signal isn't just political, it's human lives. But he wasn't the only one sending a warning shot that day just hours later. Russia made its position brutally clear, not with words but with bombs. As US and Russian envoys talked peace, Russia unleashed chaos. In the 24 hours surrounding the Witkoff-Putin meeting, Ukrainian cities were pounded by a fresh wave of missile and drone attacks. 6 people were killed, among the wounded children. One of the worst strikes hit a recreation center in the southeastern city of Zaporizhia. 2 people died instantly. 12 more were injured, 4 of them kids. There was no military target, no strategic reason. Just destruction. President Zelensky was furious. Zero military sense, he said in his nightly address. Just cruelty aimed at instilling fear. But the attacks didn't stop there. Overnight, Russia targeted critical energy infrastructure, including a gas compressor station that helps Ukraine receive S and Azerbaijani energy imports. The strike hit the town of Novosilski, near Ukraine's southern border with Romania. The Energy Ministry confirmed dozens of strike drones were used in a coordinated assault. Hundreds of families lost access to gas. Not just an inconvenience, a direct blow to Ukraine's preparations for the winter, heating season, and that's exactly the point. These attacks weren't just about territory. They were psychological. A reminder that even as Putin talks diplomacy, he still holds a match over Ukraine's survival. And yet, while the bombs fell, Ukraine got a lifeline from the West. While the world watched Trump, Putin, and Zelensky exchange signals, the West made a move of its own, quiet, but powerful. On the same day Russia bombed Ukrainian cities, the U.S. and its allies opened the floodgates to a new wave of support. First, the U.S. State Department signed off on a $200 million weapons deal that will allow American partners to purchase military supplies for Ukraine. That includes technical support for heavy artillery, a key component of Ukraine's battlefield strength. And then came the bigger headline: over $1 billion in new pledges from NATO countries. 4 of Ukraine's European allies, the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, announced they would jointly purchase U.S.-made weapons for Kyiv. No more delays, no more red tape. This wasn't symbolic, it was a strategic message. We're not counting on diplomacy. We're preparing for war because behind all the noise about summits and ceasefires, Western governments know one thing: Putin doesn't back down easily. And if this latest round of talks fails, Ukraine can't afford to be caught unprepared. This new round of funding ensures they won't be. It also sends a message to Russia, and maybe even to Trump, that peace is the goal, but strength is the backup plan. And that's where this story takes its final turn, as Trump's gamble could either change history or explode in his face. So here we are, one envoy meeting, one vague promise, and one global superpower walking a razor's edge. Trump says there's a good chance the war in Ukraine could end soon, but good chances don't guarantee peace, especially when they depend on Vladimir Putin behind the scenes. We're watching a high-stakes balancing act unfold in real time. Trump is racing toward a summit, trying to outmaneuver traditional diplomacy. Putin is sending signals but still bombing cities and civilians. Zelensky is pleading for caution, while preparing for the worst, and the West, it's quietly arming up. Just in case all of this is a trap, this isn't just another chapter in the war. This could be a turning point or a catastrophic miscalculation. Because if this fragile moment collapses, if peace talks fail and sanctions explode, the consequences could be bigger than anything we've seen so far. And the question now isn't just whether Trump can pull it off, it's whether the world is ready for what happens if he doesn't.